All right, on this week's episode of the I-501cu, the podcast for nonprofit board members, I'm going to talk about the 4 primary roles of the board of directors. And this has really come to light over the last several months as I've worked with more boards. This is episode 53. We had our 1-year episode last week, and so this is 53. We're kicking off a new year, and I'm just going to talk for the next few minutes. And then we will go back to having regular guests on an every other week schedule if we can do that, if I can get off my backside and schedule more guests. But actually, we do have that. So, hey, everybody, this is Michael Corley. Just wanted to let you know we are now sending out a weekly, very brief newsletter, tips, tricks, pointers to nonprofit executives. That includes both board members and CEOs, executive directors. If you're interested in receiving this, please go to thecorleycompany.com/newsletter and you can sign up. Once again, that's thecorleycompany.com/newsletter. Let me tell you about the 4 primary roles of a board of directors. And I think this is really important because I've spoken to a number of people who are exploring board membership. And so I want to emphasize, because it seems like some board members aren't aware of these 4 primary roles. What the number one role, and these are not in any specific order, is governance, right? The role of the board is to provide governance for the organization, ensure that it's administered and run properly. And then that's a whole podcast, and then some in and of itself. And we've talked about that in the past before. But the primary role, one of the 4 primary roles, is governance of the organization. Number 2 would be somewhat aligned with that, is oversight and fiduciary responsibility. As a board member, you are entrusted with guarding the public good. You know, it's a tax-free organization, or tax-exempt, I should say, organization. And you're responsible for ensuring that the funders' dollars are used as the funders intended to do. Whether the funder is the government, a funder is an individual, a funder is a foundation. You must provide that oversight to guard and monitor that public trust that those funds are being deployed properly. So you've got governance, which talks about the administration of the organization. You've got strategic oversight and fiduciary responsibility, and guidance on the strategic direction of the organization. And this is really important. As a board, you are responsible for that strategic direction of the organization in order for the CEO or the executive director to then run the organization to achieve those strategic objectives. Obviously, you don't usually do those mutually apart or exclusive with the executive director. You want to do it in collaboration, but it is the board's responsibility to provide that strategic direction and give guidance to the executive director in primary focus areas over the next 1, 3, 5 years, if you will. So we've got governance, we've got oversight, fiduciary oversight, we got strategic direction, and number 4, and this is the one that causes pain for so many people, is a board's responsibility for fundraising. It is a nonprofit. Nonprofits need monies. Typically, monies are done by selling products and services, not in a nonprofit. Oftentimes, many times, most times, if not all times, nonprofits need to raise dollars outside of the normal course of business in order to provide the good that they're doing. A major responsibility of a board member is to make connections, introduce prospective donors to the executive director, CEO, invite people to various activities and events to create exposure, really, in short, to be an ambassador to the organization so that it's in a position to raise funds outside of its normal course of business. And there's really no way around this. I hear people say, well, I don't like fundraising. You don't have to ask for the money, but you do have a responsibility to ensure the financial integrity of the organization. And part of that is making sure there's enough revenues, and oftentimes revenues in the nonprofit sector come from donors, grants, funders, things along those lines. The fundraising responsibility of a board member does include making a personal contribution. So yes, you're out making connections, you're helping connect people, but you are obligated, I dare say you are obligated to make a personal contribution to the organization for which you're sitting on the board of, for a number of reasons. We've talked about this in podcasts in the past, because if you're asking people for money, you should probably donate. Yes, your company may donate, but you should make a personal contribution, because if you sit on the board, it's just a testament to the support you have as a board member. Your nonprofit should be a priority of your personal funding, your personal giving. Yes, you do make connections, you do make introductions, you help raise external dollars, but you really should make a personal contribution as well. So please accept that responsibility, help your executive director out, and be sure to make those connections so that you are helping to fund the organization. So really, there are 4 primary roles of the executive director, of the board: governance, oversight, fiduciary oversight, strategic oversight, and fundraising. If you focus on those 4 things as a board, you will do things your nonprofit should do exceedingly well. And I know your executive director will appreciate that. This is Michael Corley, episode 53 of the I-501C, the podcast for nonprofit board members. And we will see you next week.